You are tuned in to the Trudy Haynes Show. Keep watching.
This is Trudy Haynes, and this is a special Trudy Haynes show because we're going to be talking about education. But because we have one of the most esteemed privileges of having the new superintendent of Philadelphia Public Schools with us today, and this is supposedly a coup, a rare interview, one of the first rare interviews that he's going to witness and experience while he's here, and we hope that'll be a long time. So we want to welcome you to Philadelphia, first of all, and to welcome the rest of our staff that's here. Next to me is Bill Anderson of WURD Radio. We also have Jerry Jordan, who is the president of the Philadelphia Union, Teachers Union. And on the other side of Dr. Haidt, we have Kathy Lee, who is a former retired school teacher and a parent. What we want to talk about, Bill, I'm going to let you start off because you've been following these stories for a long period of time. But before we do, Dr. Haidt, I think a lot of people might want to know who you are, where you're from, and a little about yourself.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Thank you. Thank you for having me. First of all, my name is William Haidt. I am a junior, so there is a William Haidt Sr. I am a proud father and more recently, a proud grandfather of a baby boy who's now 7 months old, just turned 7 months. So really excited about that. I have been a educator most of my professional life. I've been a teacher, middle and high school principal, instructional director, assistant superintendent, regional superintendent, deputy superintendent, superintendent. I come to Philadelphia from Prince George's County, just outside of the Washington, D.C. area, where we educated 124,000 young people in a diverse county made up primarily of African-American citizens with a large and growing population of Latino students. Prior to that, I was down just outside of Atlanta in a district called Cobb County. And then before that, I was just outside of Richmond, Virginia, where I grew up. And I worked for Henrico County Public Schools. And so I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled with the opportunity.
You would have to be.
Yes, but your reputation has sort of preceded you as the big fixer. So, Bill, you take it from there.
No, I think that's a great segue. And listening into your background as an educator, but also as an administrator, I'm curious, coming from PG County, because there were some similar challenges, what do you view in coming to Philadelphia as the biggest challenge that you immediately face?
Well, there are a lot of challenges, and naturally, budget and revenue are significant challenges here. And it is something that we also faced in Prince George's County, to your point earlier. And so whenever there are revenue challenges, naturally there are very tough and difficult decisions to make, and we will have to make some of those decisions here in the district. However, equally important are challenges around who stands in front of children in terms of educating them, and who stands in front of schools, and how do we get the best individuals in front of students, irrespective of where those students live, who they are, and the type and degree of content that we want those young people exposed to. And so this notion of making sure we have top talent in the system, and also making sure that we have the ability to really develop and build talent of individuals who are already in the system. I think that's really important. And then I think the third piece, and this is just from my observations already, is really taking advantage of the passion that I've witnessed in the few times that I've been in the city of Philadelphia already. And that passion is around education and ensuring that the system is providing better opportunities and options for many of the young people who attend. And so I think that those are the three immediate challenges, in my opinion, as we begin a transition into the city of Philadelphia.
You know, yet you're surrounded by teachers and the president of the teachers union. But I'm in hearing that, Mr. Jordan, in hearing about this commitment to talent, but also the budget challenges. What has to happen with the teachers union as you welcome Dr. Haidt in to find that relationship where the best talent can come in while still dealing with all the budget issues we're facing?
Well, we don't recruit. That's something that Dr. Haidt is going to have to deal with the Human Resources Department. We have a lot of great talent in each of our schools already, and in a couple of weeks, the teachers and support staff will return to their schools, and they'll be ready to teach children, which is what they do. What they need is support. They need to have meaningful professional development so that they're even better at what they do. But they stand ready to teach and ready to learn.
One of the things, though, are you prepared to pay teachers for their performance? Pay extra money for their performance? Is that one of the things that you will do?
Well, we don't. I mean, with that revenue situation, the whole notion of pay is going to be a challenge just in general. And I think that we've seen pay for performance models. We tried one in Prince George's County in collaboration with a teachers union. And what we found was that that model really did not change behaviors of the adults standing in front of students. And what was most beneficial, and this is from our teachers, this is not from most of the teachers who participated, indicated that they continued to participate because they enjoyed the conversations that they were having with their colleagues about their profession and their practice and their ability to learn from each other. And I would submit that those are environments that we can create in other ways as opposed to just a mechanism that just talks solely about paying individuals for performance. And what we found is just like across the country, in my opinion, and this is anecdotal, but it's been proven empirically as well, that just a pay for performance model, just for the sake of doing a pay-for-performance model, has not been the most effective use of the resources that are available. So we would have to really have that conversation about what are the best opportunities to, number one, provide teachers with the ability to converse with each other about their practice, and number two, to have voice in what types of professional development do they feel would be worthwhile for them in their context and in their classroom. And the final thing I would say about that is also really look at structures that provide for teachers an opportunity to really talk with each other about their practice. And teaching over the years, and this is my observation, has become a very isolated experience, and I think that some of the best teaching occurs, just in my opinion, from when individuals have the opportunity to really converse with each other about practice, base those decisions on data, and really have a chance to really talk about the type of student work that's being produced by their young people.
It was interesting because both of the teachers on either side, and Kathy, you were both nodding your head when he said it's not necessarily about money or about pay for performance, and especially when he said about isolation. So if it's not just about the money, what's it about? As a teacher and a parent, what needs to happen to get teachers more engaged and get parents more engaged if it's not just money?
Well, I'm going to tell you something really straight from the heart. I loved teaching. I truly loved my job. And one of the things that really made me more committed to my teaching, to piggyback on what Dr. Haidt said, was meaningful professional development. And the Teaching American History grant really improve my teaching in my content area. Because when I studied, let's say, the West, Melvin Garrison from the school district took us out west. But it takes funding to do that, and no one is willing to pour the money into the funding. The school district, I will say, offers a lot of professional development. All they have to do is go online. But what I used to do training for the school district, because I've done a lot of that, like the content institutes and things like that. I facilitated some of those. I could look around. All the successful schools had all their teachers there. I was the only one from mine. So where are you? And then you want to complain about the behavior of the children. You want to complain about what's happening in the classroom, but you're not at the professional developments. And some of them were in your school, and they weren't there. A lot of the teachers that I have been acquainted with throughout the years, I've met some tremendous teachers. And I've met some that just really just do not like kids and should not be there. And I just really feel that if they feel that way, it's because they're not supported. They need to be supported. They need to be able to teach in a creative fashion. And before we had to teach to the test, before Nickleby, there was more passion with the teachers. It was creative. I didn't need to have 10 parents go with me to take 30 kids on a field trip. Now they slam down all of that. Where before I could just roll with 30 kids. Connie and I would roll with 60 kids downtown, doing service learning, doing things like that.
But come back to the to the test, because everybody kind of talked about that, and Dr. Height, the teach to the test mandate comes from higher than you, doesn't it? I mean, the teach to the test comes from the federal government. Can you even address that with No Child Left Behind still in place? Can you give that creativity that Kathy's talking about?
Yeah, so one thing I want to go back to our earlier question and then come to this one. And I think it was just in my response to performance-based pay. And I don't think that is a mechanism that is as useful as many people perceive. However, that doesn't communicate that it's not about money. And in fact, the teaching profession, in my opinion, is one of the professions that is historically taken for granted. And I think that where we can, we should pay teachers as much as we possibly can. And that is my absolute belief. And we celebrate a whole lot of other things, but then we expect teachers to kind of take less. And so I think it's really important to put that out as well. But
he was kicking me under the table saying rap when you said pay him as much money.
Yeah, I got you. I'm sure he was. Roll credit. Yeah. But back to this notion about the test. And I do think, I think we've gotten confused with this notion of ranking and making public all of this information about how schools are doing, and it's become really driven by, it's been in the name of accountability, although we say all students are going to be exposed to this information, so they must all do well here. And in all of that, what has become lost is this notion of skills that students need in order to be productive citizens and competitive in the 21st century. So where is problem solving? Where is thinking critically? Where is being able to collaborate with another student? Where is communication? Where is working with a diverse group of individuals? These are all things that students are going to be asked to do when they leave our schools and try to do other places. They are not going to be asked, so what is the answer to this question? And I think what has happened is we've gotten so focused on the result, the test result, that we've forgotten some very important skills, life and employable skills that our students need. And if we talk more from those skills, and then I think that then the content then should be a function of that, as opposed to giving them the content and hoping that they have skills to actually look at a problem and come up with a solution. So I think the whole notion, and you're right, this is not just a local issue. This is a national issue where individuals are putting out this certain assessment, and I believe in assessments. I mean, we have to know where students are and what they're able to do. But I think we've become more about like ranking and sorting and looking at that information that way than saying, where was this student when they started, where are they now, and what do we need in order to take them to this place, and really talking about it from a notion of what we want all children to know and be able to do. And I think that has been lost in this conversation, because then people just see it as just memorization and recall of information, as opposed to students understanding that information as a function of learning how to be a competitive citizen and having with employable skills.
Coming into the school system here, you had to rate it from 1 to 10. Where would you put us at this moment?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I mean, that's a hard question in terms of ranking the system. Now, I want to rank the efforts of individuals. Let's rank the commitments. Let's rank the passion. So I'd rather not rank the system, but let's rank what has been a commitment to students and to the District of Philadelphia in some very significant times. So,
do you have a timetable?
Do I have a timetable for improvement?
What do you want to see?
Yeah. Yeah, my timetable is always like tomorrow. And so I'm always urgent around just kind of the improving conditions and improving outcomes for students. So I always think that needs to occur as quickly as possible. But I also need to make sure everybody has a realistic expectation that these things don't turn around overnight, and that this is about developing and building the capacity of everybody who works with children, and making sure that those individuals are part of that conversation, and then making sure that we can then hold each other accountable for those results. And that's going to take some time. But that takes time to improve practice. That takes time to reflect on the types of things that I can do in my classroom in order to ensure that I am challenging every student. It takes time to understand how to analyze data to make sure the students get exactly what they need in terms of resources and support. It takes time to build sufficient expectations that all students can and will succeed. And so all of those things take time to do that. If I could wave a magic wand, I would like to see all of those things improve tomorrow. But what I found, particularly as a district administrator, is that some of the results from things that we have done 4 years ago are really starting to come to fruition now. And so that's not an overnight thing. That is something where we've all been involved and everyone has worked hard.
In Philadelphia, we may hold the teachers and the teachers union almost as accountable as the superintendent or the CEO. And so what would you need? I mean, in hearing all this, and we talked about teaching to the test, and we talked about Dr. Height's expectations. What are the teachers' expectations right now and the union's expectations as Dr. Height comes in, so that you can deliver on all of these desires to improve education?
Well,
you already told him.
Pardon?
He knows. Tell us.
Well, let me say a couple things. I want to go back to the pay for performance. That assumes that teachers aren't working hard now. They're going to work harder if there's going to be pay for performance. That's not really going to ever happen because they're working hard. Can't work any harder. And studies across the country have shown that when they've evaluated pay for performance, they've found that it didn't make any difference because teachers really continue to work the same way. Dr. Height made some really interesting points that I agree with, specifically about certain changes and the need for time to allow for those changes to take effect. And that's really important. And we've got to get away from the atmosphere that we're living in public education across this country, that you've got to teach to the test, and if you don't, there will be sanctions, particularly when you deal with a population like we have here in Philadelphia, where poverty is as high as it is. And we know that children who live in families, in households where there is poverty, they have additional needs. And we've got to address those needs for them to really be successful. Poverty is not an excuse or a reason as to why children can't learn. They can. They're as bright as every other person, every other child. I don't care where the child lives. Mm-hmm. But we have, in a district our size and with the population of students and families that we serve, we have to have the resources in order to be able to make the difference for the children. And teaching has to become fun again. Teachers have to have fun in the classroom. Teaching is a fun job. It's a hard job, but it's fun if you have the freedom to be able to be creative and not be forced to teach to the test. You certainly need to be responsible for a curriculum, and that all third graders should know the same thing by June. But how you teach it, the instructional practice, you should be able to handle and figure that out. And when you teach it, you may not want to go in the same order if a course is not sequential like mathematics. That you need to have the freedom to be able to make the determination as a teacher how best to work with your class.
Can we? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Can we change it? Because you talked about poverty is not an excuse. So we've talked about the need for additional resources. None of that works if the students aren't safe in the schools, and if the teachers aren't safe in the schools. So is that kind of the foundation where you have to start? Because even with unlimited resources, if you can't go from class to class or you're constantly being disrupted, that seems to stop the progress.
Well, I think that, number one, you have to have environments where people feel safe. I mean, both students and adults alike. However, it's also really important to understand that, so it's kind of how we create those environments. And so on one hand, you have areas where there needs to be enforcement. So there are rules, there are clear rules for student behavior, there are clear expectations. If students go outside of those lines, then there are consequences. And so that's on the one hand. On the other hand, though, is a real need to make sure that we are creating environments where children feel respected, adults feel respected, that there are environments where individuals know you as a student and as an adult, and that where there are environments where individuals are providing you with opportunities to just kind of redirect some behavior. And I do think those things are equally important. And so we were talking earlier about individuals who may not like kids, may like teaching but may not like kids. So students feel that, and students understand that. And so that's not anything that you can fake. I mean, so it is making sure that the environments are also conducive. And when I'm talking about conducive environments is where all individuals feel respected and cared for in a building. The other piece is that a lot of things come back to what either happens or doesn't happen in the classroom. And if children are sufficiently engaged, which means that it's both the type of content that we're using and the type of instruction, if they're sufficiently engaged, they're less likely to act out as well. And I'm just talking about on a whole. And if students are enjoying their experience, they're less likely to act out. So it's also making sure that the whole notion of teaching and learning is as important as everything else.
Kathy's got that look like I got something to tell you.
I am that teacher that you described. I had kids that would wolf down their lunch, sneak back upstairs to sit in my classroom to hear my lessons again.
Absolutely.
I was creative. When we talked about slopes, I took them outside on the hill. I had snowball fights to reenact the Battle of, Germantown. And they had the little colonial hats on. These are high school kids acting really crazy. These are middle school kids acting very crazy. But you have to know your content area in order to do that. And I was able to address all of the skills that you're talking about that the kids needed to achieve through creative planning of projects, through all of the training that I had. The connections, I brought experts into the classroom. That's how I met Trudy. I had fun. Kids that were a problem in other classes, they built three-dimensional models of Independence Hall down there. My room was a crap mess. And I got, the people that took care of the rooms, Miss Lee would know you're busy, but can you please have no sleep with some of the stuff? You're talking about 5 classes with things. You gave them X-Acto knives. Well, how are you going to cut foam board? I mean, there comes a level of trust. That's why one of the things that I think made me a successful teacher and a successful parent is I always planned out everything I was going to do. I always knew the parameters of everything. I'm heavier than I'm 100 pounds heavier. You know why? Because I was down in the lunchroom having breakfast with the kids. I paid for it. I was down in the lunchroom having lunch with the kids. I would go mingle with different groups every day, so they knew me. And if I said, you shouldn't say that, I don't like that, delineate and desist, I never had a problem in the classroom.
So why doesn't that behavior spread? Or does it? Is that the norm with teachers, or is there something that's stopping that from being the norm?
To your question, to expand on that question, how can we establish the conditions to allow Kathy to help other teachers with that type of instruction? And so how do you create a set of conditions, time and a schedule, to allow teachers to converse about or to even see her practice in the class? Because I think that then people will say, but wait a second, I may want to try that. Or she may have some examples. Hey, you tried this, didn't quite work so well. Maybe you want to think about it differently or think about it this way.
And we do have a number of great teachers in every school who do many of the things that Kathy described.
But in isolation.
Yes.
It's always in isolation.
Well, that's the nature of what it is how we operate many of our schools.
And I think that should stop.
Here we go.
Here I am in the middle.
Okay, but I think
so then, so what are your ideas for creating or breaking down those walls for isolation so that we could share the type of practice that was just described?
Go ahead, Jerry. Give us an idea.
Well, it's called time, and with time, things such as a common planning period needs to be rostered. However, when you roster a common planning period, it's very difficult to do it without additional resources. I have to go back to that. And then it's possible for teachers to be able to collaborate about a variety of things, content as well as operations of a system, of a school.
Kathy, Dr. Height, Jerry, Bill, my friend, to all of you, thank you.